Hey everyone, we are here for the Set 3 full card review. We're going to be going over every card and giving it a rating. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm pretty excited for this set. I think it's mixed opinions. There's definitely a lot of cards I'm very low on, and I think I will be a little more harsher than last set, and my reasoning is because as we get more sets in the game, there's going to be less easily replaceable cards in a lot of decks unless we are being introduced to a brand new archetype that is immediately strong, right? So a lot of these cards are just not going to find places in these pre-existing decks. Now, they might find places in these brand new decks, but we have really no way of knowing if those are going to be good or not, so we're going to do our best to guess if they're going to be good or not, right? So it's going to be a lot of fun. If you guys are excited, please leave a like and subscribe. That would really help me out. We're getting a lot of new subscribers and comments and stuff, and I'm really appreciative of that. Also, join the Discord. We have a very growing community in there, very fun, very active, talking about the game and decks and stuff like that. So check those out. I'm going to leave a link to the Discord in the description, and let's get into it. So first we're going to start with neutral, and I think neutral is pretty interesting. One thing I do want to say is we, of course, are only getting 76 cards this set. I talked about this day one of reveals, but I think now that we have all of the cards, it's very telling that that is just not enough cards for this game. We really just don't have a lot of avenues for most of these classes to go down different paths, and there's not a ton of deck building we can do when we're only getting 10 cards per class and 6 neutral cards, or 7 neutral cards. So there's 77 cards, because Jeroboam is 77, right? So, yeah, so let's get into it, but I am very disappointed about the 76 cards, and that's something I'd really like for them to change in the future here. So let's start with the inspirational one. Kind of a crazy poll, and maybe this is completely wrong of me, but this is obviously not like a character from Age of Bahamut or whatever, but doesn't this guy kind of look like the main character from Dragalia Lost, if you guys ever played that game? It's kind of a older mobile game. Pretty interesting. I don't know if it's like supposed to be him or whatever, but 2-drop 1/3 ward activates in your hand when an enemy follower super evolves. Give this follower Bane. So overall, I think this card is pretty weak. We're going to see another card that activates in the hand when they super evolve, right? And I don't think that this one is going to cut it. If this was a 2-drop 2/2 ward, I could maybe see this as an option in Ward Haven, right? But obviously it wouldn't activate when you get it off Aether. So overall, I don't think this card really has any place in the decks that we have right now, and even future decks. I just don't know why you'd want a 2-drop 1/3 ward, and then in the late game it'll gain Bane. I just don't think that's good enough. So I'm going to give this guy 1. I don't think he's very playable. Then we have Dogged 1, which is an insane translation for the name. Dogged 1 is so funny. 3-drop 3/1, Rush, activates in hand when an enemy follower super evolves, gives this follower Storm. So this is definitely the better version of this activates in hand when super evolve card. And I actually think this card is pretty good and might be like pretty nuts. If we come back in 2 months and go, wow, Dogged 1 was the best card in the set, I wouldn't be too surprised because Storm is really strong. Obviously, this is 1 attack less than Odin, and Odin costs 7 instead of 3. I could see this. I don't know if I could see this in an aggro deck, right? But just because you're only getting the Storm late game by turn 6 and 7, right? But in something like maybe a control deck that wants to Storm out to win, so maybe a control Abyss, right? Maybe even control Haven. I could see this being used. Overall, I think it's like, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. If it's used more than that, then I'm not going to be shocked, if that makes sense, right? So, Dogged 1, 3 out of 5. I think it's a pretty good card. Don't love these type of designs where it's really hard to play around as your opponent, right? Because it's just, when they super evolve, they could have it, but they could not have it, right? You could be playing around ghosts, right? So, yeah, Dogged 1, 3 out of 5. If it's a 5 out of 5 in 2 months, I wouldn't be surprised, though. Then we have Gilnelis, the legendary neutral card. 3-drop 0/3 with Drain. On play, select another follower on the field and give it +2/-2. If both players have 10 max play points, add a Sweetness of Veracity to your hand. And then all evolve, she's going to select a follower on the field and give it +2/-2. So the evolve effect she can select herself, but the on-play effect she cannot select herself. And then the Sweetness of Veracity is 5-drop, deal 5 damage to a random enemy follower and the enemy leader. So overall, what do I think about this card? I think this is really weak. I think this is not a good card. The issue with this is it's only really good on 3 going first or literally at turn 10, right? There's a big gap where this card is terrible because it's only going to be getting to 4 attack when you evolve it. And a lot of times on that first Evo turn, that's not enough to clear boards or clear a big threat, right? So let's think about like a Zirconia becomes a 6/6 and summons 2/2/2s. So even if Zirconia had to swing into something and it was like at 2 health, say, you're still only killing the Zirconia and you're getting a little bit of healing, but that healing is basically negated by the knights that are still alive, right? And there's just a lot better cards that you could be playing for removal. I guess it kills one of the knights and Zirconia in that instance, or technically it leaves the Gilded Lease alive if Zirconia is actually at 2 health, right? Because on play, you're going to give something -2 and kill the knight, right? So, but if she's at any higher, it's going to be a little rough, right? So I think if a deck, it really needs some healing, I could see it played, but I don't think that's going to be many decks. I think it's only going to really have a place in hard control decks like Control Abyss, Control Haven, stuff like that. Even Control Abyss has a lot better 3-drops. Like, Vuela is way better than this card, but again, if you are so in need of healing, I could see this card. I'm going to give this a 2, though, and I think that's being a little generous, if I'm being honest. I think that it's going to be a 2, but I don't expect this to really see any play. If this was a 3-mana 1/3, I think it'd be way better. The other issue I wanted to touch on is that if there's a board where, like, let's say they have a 3/3, this card's pretty unplayable on curve without an Evo, right? Because it's not dealing 2 damage, it's buffing them and then giving them minus health. So if they have a 3/3, you can't really play this because then you'll take 5 damage, right? So stuff like that just makes this card really awkward. I really wish this was a 1/3 to at least get like some value from being on the board without Evo points. But yeah, overall I think Gilded Lease is a 2 and a pretty gracious 2, to be honest. Next we have the Tablet of Tribulations, 3-drop neutral amulet. On play, banish all duplicates from your deck, and then engage, draw a card. So basically what this card is going to do is you're going to turn your deck into basically like, if you're playing 3 of every card, a maybe 12 to 11 card deck, and then every turn you're going to be able to draw 2 cards instead of the normal 1. How good is that? I think there are some builds you can make that could be good. One immediate thing I was thinking of is something like a Control Haven, where Haven can already get this card out without activating its on-play with Rodeo, which I think is pretty cool. But if you do play this, you could play this and then draw into something like a Cocytus, and then refill your deck to not deck out, right? Because that's the main issue with this card, is that you can easily deck out, but you're kind of guaranteed to draw a lot of your good cards, if that makes sense, right? So very interesting card that I think will not have a ton of application outside of really hard control decks or really gimmicky decks. Like, we could see a deck where you just have like a perfect mana curve that you can create if you banish all duplicates or something like that, and this card could be really good in that. But I think this is going to be best friends with Cocytus because you don't want to deck yourself out, right? So I'm going to give this a 2. I kind of want to give it a 3 too, because I see a lot of potential in it, but I'm going to be on the safe side. I'm going to give it a 2. I think that it is a little bit of a gimmick, but drawing an extra card every turn is really good. And of course it is good in every Jerry deck, because Jerry replaces your deck with a 76 card deck, and you're able to play this on 3, and hopefully you get 2 draws, or actually 3 draws, right? Because you play this on 3, draw with this effect, then you have a draw on your next turn, then you activate this again to draw into your Jerry to activate his effect, right? So, pretty interesting card. I'm going to give it a 2, though, because I think really the only potential it has is in a Haven-style deck. But, yeah, pretty cool card, actually. I like the design of that. Next, we have Apostle of Veracity. Pretty interesting card here. 4-drop, 2/2 bronze. On play, he's like a bird type thing. The art's really cool, actually. On play, you're going to give another follower on the field, so that can be your own or your opponent's. Give it -4/-4. So you can kind of think of this, again, like we were talking about with Gilmillies. If it doesn't kill something, it's really rough, right? Because you don't want to make your 5/5, your opponent's 5/5 a 9/1, unless you can kill it with like a knight or something, right? But then also you can think of the applications where if you have something live, you can buff this with, you can buff your thing that lived with this and then swing an extra 4 damage. The issue, and I think they designed this really well, and I think this is just sort of like a toxic design that they can't make too good, because they designed this so that you cannot really combo this with like a storm card on the same turn until like way later in the game, where it's just not that good of a combo, right? So if this was like a 3-drop, I could see this thing being insane, right? Where it's like, then you can get some Evo stuff happening, and just, it could be kind of problematic. But overall, I don't think this card is playable. I'm going to give it a 1, but it's a pretty interesting design, but I just don't think it's something that they can do without being too careful. I think they were a little too careful here with the Apostle of Veracity. Then we have the man himself, Jerry Majerabane. 4-drop, 3/3. On play, you're going to add a Great Testimony to your hand, and then on evolve, you're going to gain his crest. And his crest is when you gain this crest, replace your deck with the Jerry deck, and transform the Reaper card at the bottom of your deck into a victory card. At the end of your turn, discard all cards not named Great Testimony and draw 6 cards. So, let's cover Great Testimony real quick here. 1-drop, select the enemy file on the field and destroy it. I'm glad it's not random, right? So, on play, you're going to turn... so first of all, on play, he's just a 4-drop 3/3 that gives you a 1-drop that hard removes something. Is that good enough? Like, let's think about that without evolving, right? Is that good enough in control decks? Maybe. It is one of those like issues like my man Gravy, right? Where he's kind of unevoable. But is there some sort of thing where it's like, okay, playing this just to get a hard removal card that I could use later, but I have an alternate win condition? Maybe. That's something interesting to think about. But I think the main thing about this card is, of course, the Evo. So you're going to replace your deck with a 76-card deck that is every card of this expansion, right? So every card we cover today is going to be in this Jerry deck as a one-of. And the goal is to deck yourself out and win the game, right? So every turn you're going to draw 6 cards, a la Deus Ex Machina a little bit, right, from SV1. And so if you have no other card draw, right, you're basically drawing 7 cards a turn because you draw the 6 and then the 1 at the beginning of the turn. So you would basically need to pass 10 turns-ish to win the game. And that is, of course, assuming we have no other card draw. But then we look at some other card draw we have access to, like the Amulet, and then like another card we're going to look at here soon. I actually don't think this is that bad. It just depends. It's a little luck-based, right? And I think that you really need to draw your good cards from this set in the beginning half of your deck. And maybe there's something here. I don't know. I think the best archetype or the best class for this would be Forest, right? Because you can play not only the new Amulet, but also the Godwood Staff. But it's something we have to figure out, I think. It's something we're going to have to try. It's going to be really hard to rate this without playing with it. But thinking about it as just sort of like an alternate win condition that you can play in some matchups in like a control deck, kind of interesting. It is another one of those Cocytus type decks where if you don't want to deck out, right, like you could theoretically play this in like a Control Haven deck, right? You play the Amulet, you draw through your deck, and then you go, okay, whoops, I'm almost decked out. Let me play Jerry, Evo, refresh my deck, and keep grinding and not really go for necessarily a win at the bottom of my deck, but go for just some value stuff, right, in that grind game, right? But again, a lot of grind game is just not going to exist with Rune as it is. So I'm going to give this a 3. Talking it through and, thinking about it, I actually do like this card more. But we're just, again, going to have to play with it. I'm going to give it a 3. I think it's like a very solid 3, though. I think it's a 3 that could go in either direction, right? Then we have Greatness Ascended, 4-drop spell for neutral. Draw 3 cards. If there are no duplicates in your deck, recover 3 play points. So in the Jerry deck, after you evo him, this card is nuts, right? It's going to draw like 3 cards, which really accelerates your win condition, and it's only going to be for 1 mana. But again, if you combine this with the amulet, you can go, if you still haven't drawn Jerry, you can play this on 5, and hopefully you're still drawn to Jerry, because you only have 12 cards left, right? And then find the Jerry. So I do kind of like, I kind of like this card. I'm going to give it a 2, though. I don't think it's as good as like the main body, and I think it has almost 0 application without the stone, or without the rock, and without Jerry. But overall, I think this card is pretty good. And maybe there's some universe where the game slows down immensely and you'd want a 4-drop, draw 3 cards. Or there's some sort of deck that can exist where you actually do want to play Singleton without like the Jerry stuff. Like you're just playing 40 neutral or regular cards and you can play 2 of these, right? So I don't know. Kind of interesting card, but overall, not too sure. I'm going to give that one a 2, right? So that is neutral. Overall, I think neutral got a couple interesting cards. Jerry and the tablet and the Greatness Ascended, I like because they are not just full gimmicks. They actually seem that they could be playable in some aspect, and they're need testing, right? Dogged One is a pretty good card too, but overall, I think neutral is okay. All right, next we move on to Forest. And Forest desperately needs some support to move away from Roach. All of its non-Roach support has been pretty bad and not impactful. And did they get it? Maybe. Let's talk about it and let's talk through all of these cards. There's a couple cards that are interesting, but a couple cards that on face value look pretty bad. So first we have Eradicating Arrow. 1-drop, do this X times, give you a random enemy follower on the field -1 health. X is your combo. So this is going to be a really nice combo payoff for removing the board. I think this is a good card. The issue, though, I see is that you already have Glade, and I think in a deck that wants to run this, you're probably not playing a ton of combo fodder, right? You're probably not playing a ton of fairies and a ton of 0-cost stuff to be able to really like wipe a board. But even if you get like 2 or 3 random damage, I think this card could still be pretty good. I'm going to give this a 3. I think that this definitely could see play in a control force deck that I think they want you to play. Then we get Devotee of Unkilling. And this is a 2-drop 2/2. On play, select an enemy follower on the field and give it -1 health. Obviously, the immediate comparison is the Lovestruck Puppeteer, one of, if not the best 2-drop in the game. Of course, that is the 2-drop 2/2 for Portal that gives you a puppet in your hand. This card is very comparable. Obviously, puppets you can save for later. This has like an immediate effect, but I do really like this card. I'm going to give this a 4. I think that even outside of this Unkilling archetype, I could see this being played in other Forest decks that pop up that are not Roach, right? Because obviously you're not playing this in Roach, but in any other deck that pops up that's like Control, I could see this, or even just like a mid-range deck, right? So I really like this. Another comparable card is Belinus. Belinus, of course, was back in the day, 2-drop 2/2 on death, deal 1 damage to a random enemy follower. That was a really good 2-drop for Shadow for a very long time. This is kind of comparable, but you get to choose where the minus goes. So I do really like this. Again, I'm going to give it a 4. Then we have Bearer of the Fairy Blade, 2-drop 1/3. Whenever an allied pixie follower enters the field, give this follower +1 attack. My immediate reaction is, I think of Tunnel Trog from Hearthstone, but obviously this is way worse than Tunnel Trog because it's a 2-drop and it only works on cards that are 1/1s inherently, right? So Also, this game is just different where there's a lot more removal. There's not more. This card is way worse in the late game because think you just Evo over it, right? So overall, I think this card's unplayable. I'm going to give this a 1, but it's a funny card. It's a funny card. If there's ever a fairy aggro deck that for some reason is not playing Roach, or like, you want to play like an aggressive damage forest deck, but you don't want to play Roach or whatever, I could see this card being in it, but I don't know. Cute card though. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. Then we have Bestial Swipe. 2-drop select. One of my favorite words this set, to be honest. Select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 4 damage. Combo 3, draw a card. There's not a lot of 5s in this set. And I don't think I can give this a 5. But this is the best removal card that we've seen in the game so far that I can think of off the top of my head. 2-drop select or that early to deal 4/4 is a very awkward stat line in this game, right? Or health line, right? And then you're going to draw a card if you combo 3, and it's not random, it's not, whatever. I think this card is really good. I'm giving this a 4 for sure, because I even think you could theoretically play this in Roach, because it draws, right? But I don't know. I almost want to give it a 5, but I'm not. I'm going to give it a 4 just because I'm not sure how good. I'm not sure if this would go in Roach, and I'm also not sure how good this control archetype is going to be, because it's obviously a 3 of in this control deck, but I'm not sure how good that archetype is going to be, right? So I'm going to give this a 4. Kind of want to give it a 5, but I'm not. But obviously this card is really, really, really nuts. 2 mana deal 4, combo 3 draw card. Very, very good. Then we have the Hamlet of Unkilling. 3-drop amulet. On play, you're going to select a card in your hand and discard it and draw 2 cards. And then engage, destroy this card, select the enemy file on the field, and give it -2 health. So it's basically a 3-drop discard card, draw 2, and then you give something -2 health. How good is that? I think it's okay. If this controlled archetype exists, I think you're going to play this deck, or this card, and it's very comparable to the 2-drop we got last set, the 2-drop fuse something, and then draw 2 cards, right? So I think if you play both of those, you're going to have a lot of draw power, which you'll probably need. So I do kind of like this. You could obviously save the -2 effect for later, which could come up, right? So overall, I think this is an okay card, but I just don't see it seeing play outside this archetype at all. So I'm going to give this a 2. I think I'm going to give this a 2, but I think it's like a pretty solid 2. I think it's like a 2 that might see play, right? Then we have Greatwood Warrior. 4-drop 4/4. Last words. Add a Deepwood Bounty and Fairy to your hand. That's it. This is a 1. Not much to say. Can't be playing past turn 4. Turn 4 and onwards. You cannot be playing cards that do not affect the board or give you value in some way. And this card does neither of that on play, right? You have to let it die. Does not have Rush. Does not have Ward. Does not have Bane. Does not have an Evo effect. This card's a 1. This card's a 0, actually. This card is just never going to be played. Probably the worst card in the game. Yeah, this card is just horrendous. This also, not to go on a rant, but this is also the type of card where it's like, I've seen some arguments about, like, they're reducing the set size to limit these take 2 fodder and these bad cards, these pack fillers. This is a pack filler. This is, like, unplayable. Then we have Cruel. I don't know if it's Cruel or Crule. 4-drop, we'll scroll down when we get to her. I'm kind of covering. There we go. 4-drop 1/3 ambush. On play, you're going to give all enemy followers on the field -2 health. Very good AoE, right off the bat. And then once on each of your turns, when an enemy follower is given plus defense on the field, restore 1 defense to your leader. Pretty okay. This only being once per turn feels kind of bad. I guess this coming down and dealing 2 damage to the opponent's board and then healing you for like 4 or 5 would be pretty nuts. But that 1 health is just not that impactful. I would have loved if this said like 2 health maybe. But then on Super Evolve, you're going to give your opponent the crest. I did misread or speak this card in my video where I talked about this card. I knew that it was give your opponent this, but I misread it. Well, I knew that's how it worked, but I spoke it wrong. You guys know what I mean. And then the crest that you give your opponent is whenever an allied follower enters the field, give it -1/-1. So that is, of course, your opponent's field, right? So whenever they play something, that gets -1/-1. So this is the card that I think if this control archetype, this minus archetype works, it's going to be because of this card. There's a very efficient 4-drop. Like I said, we're missing 4-drops in the game. Like a lot of classes do not have good turn 4 plays that don't need Evo points, and this is exactly that. It's very good. I really like this card. I could even see this being played in Roach a little bit, depending on the meta. And it could be like a tech card, right? But I do like this card, and I really hope this makes this control archetype work. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 because I think it will be played in a lot of other forest archetypes, not just this minus health archetype, right? So this Cruel is going to be a 4, and I'm pretty excited about this card, actually. Then we have Supplicant of Unkilling, 6-drop, 5/6. This art, like, he looks familiar, but I can't place it. He looks like a character, but I don't know. On play, you're going to give all enemy followers on the field -3 health. And then on Super Evolve, you're going to replicate the effect of this Fanfare ability. So on Super Evolve, he's going to do -6 AoE, basically. And, yeah, I think this card is going to be played if it's a hard control deck, right? It's a nice AoE, and just having more cards that do AoE, like having an abundance of AoE is really good. And this is, a nice middle ground that turn 6 to do that. You're probably never super evolving him, right? But again, this card's unplayable in almost every other archetype except the hard control archetype. But I kind of like him, thinking about it more, talking about it more. I think I'm going to give him a 2 because I don't even think he's going to be like a 3 of in his archetype. He might not even be played in his archetype, but I think that he is not a bad card to have access to sort of in the forest card roster, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give Supplicant a 2. Then we have the man himself, Ezudia, Annihilation Manifest. 8-drop, 6/6. On play, select the enemy follower on the field and give it -6 health. So this is basically just going to deal 6 damage to something, kind of. Then on evolve, you're going to get an Annihilating Onslaught into your hand. Annihilating Onslaught is going to be a 6-drop spell. Activates in your hand. At the end of your turn, reduce the cost of this card by 1. Select, and then the effect is deal 6 damage to the enemy leader. If there's an allied Ezudia on the field, deal 20 damage instead. So this is, of course, the payoff and the win condition for this control deck, but it's very, very slow, right? But do we have enough stuff to facilitate this type of really slow deck? I actually think we might. You really want to get this down to about 2, right? So that you can go Ezudia or play your second Ezudia and then play this. So you have to pass basically 4 turns. You have to survive 4 turns. And that's kind of doable. And then also it is just like deal 6 damage is not terrible. If you ever see another Ezudia and this isn't in time, you're probably saving that Ezudia to combo with the first one. But you could like theoretically play another one, Evo it, and get a second one that deal 12 damage later on in the game. But it's going to be a pretty good way to win the game in this control archetype. I just don't think this control archetype can be too good with Rune still existing the way it does, right? But I do really like this guy. I really like this style of archetype, and I hope it's good. I'm going to give this guy a 2 out of 5. I think that, thinking about it more, I think initially he was a 1 for me, but I think he is like potentially playable and very simple too. It's just like play this guy and then play him again, and you win the game pretty much, right? So, and obviously if he lives, which won't happen, but if he lives, you just win the game the next turn, right? Because your thing's going to be at 5. So, pretty interesting. I'm not going to be too excited about this guy just because I don't think he's going to be too good, but it'd be awesome if he was, right? So, I'm going to give him a 2 out of 5. Then we move on to the Congregant of Unkilling, 9 mana, 4/6. When this card enters the field, summon an exact copy of it and give it give the exact copy -1 health. So, and then it also has Russian Ward. So when you play this, you're going to summon a 4/6, a 4/5, a 4/4, a 4/3, and a 4/2, all with Rush and Ward. Pretty good for a control deck, right? This is kind of like Amalia a little bit without the big main body, but of course, you're just kind of trying to survive in this archetype. You're just trying to find your second Azudia and not die. So I think this card is really good for that. And yeah, I'm going to give this... I think this is better than Azudia. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Yeah, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5 because I think it could also maybe see plays. No, it can't. No, it can't. No, it can't. It's 9 mana. I'm going to go to 2. I think it's a 2 out of 5. I think this card is pretty unplayable in any non-unkilling archetype. So, yeah, I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5. But overall, I think that this unkilling archetype might have some legs. You have a lot of good plays, and you could combine that with some old cards that we got, like Titania. Obviously, Glade is going to be in it. And then also the draw spell from last set. So Forest kind of looking a little interesting. It's something I want to try, but of course it does take a lot of legendaries, so I don't know if I'm going to craft it, but we will see what happens. All right, next we move on to Sword. Sword, when it was first announced, the legendary Sincero, I was pretty skeptical about this new Usurpation archetype because I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to get all of the loot cards without losing a ton of tempo in the early game, and the fact that you need all 4 different types of them for him to be good. But because it's Sword, they completely fixed that, and there's no issue, and we'll get into it, but I do think Sword is going to be pretty nuts in this new set. I was pretty down on Sincero, but the fact that we just get super, super, super efficient generators, I think this archetype will be pretty good. But again, I do think it'll be sort of a little small package that you put into a normal mid-range deck. But let's talk about the card. So first we have returning / 1-drop fuse loot cards. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy follower. Add a blade to your hand. And if you fuse this card, draw a card. Obviously, it's random. I think of this card as a 1-drop fuse, and then you draw a card and you get a blade. If you hit the 2 damage, that's awesome, but I'm not considering that for the strength of this card because you might not hit the right target, and you don't really want to be playing this too early game because you really want to hit that draw to make this card pretty good, right? So how good is this card? I think this is a solid 3. I'm going to give this a 3, but the random is really frustrating, but we're not going to talk about that. But I think this card is pretty good for this archetype. I'm going to give it a 3, but I think it's on the weaker side for this Usurpation archetype. Then we have the Lair of Usurpation. 1-drop, engage, destroy this card. Select a mode to activate. 1, add the blade and the necklace, or 2, add the goblet and the boots. This is just an easy way to get more gilded cards or more loot cards, right? So overall, I don't think this is the best generator, but you might just want to play it because Sword doesn't have good turn 1 plays anyway, and this is a pretty good turn 1 play. And you can obviously always save this for later until you get Sincero, and you don't need to fill your hand with these things immediately. So I do kind of like this if you're trying to go full into this Usurpation archetype, but as we'll see, and in my opinion, I don't think you need to go full blown into this archetype for it to be good. I'm going to give this, I think this is worse than the 1-drop spell, so I'm going to give this a 2, but it's a 2 with thinking about how good these other generators are going to be, right? So then we have Devotee of Usurpation. So I was initially, right, wow, we really need some good generators for this whole archetype to be good. They printed some insano generators that are super boring and not interesting at all, honestly. It's a 2-drop, 2/1, on play, gain a boots, on death, gain a goblet. This one, I'm going to talk about these 2 together, but this one I'm going to give a 4 out of 5. And then the Supplicant of Usurpation, 2-drop, 1/2, on play, gain a necklace, and then last words, gain a blade. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 as well, but these 2 are obviously very interchangeable. and they are just easy fodder to get 2 of the cards you need for Sincero into your hand. And it's just really, really nuts. I don't really know. It's not even interesting. It's just like, here's a card that gives you half of your quest done. And if you see both of these, your quest is totally done, and you just need the Sincero, and you probably win the game on 7. Because these 2 cards itself make this win the game on 7 or deal 12 damage on 7 possible and more likely to happen, right? Because since Octrus was revealed, we knew that, oh, you could go Sincero, Super Evo, deal 8 damage AoE, including the face, and then use the 1 mana, deal 4 damage to face. But it was always sort of like, well, you need a lot for that to happen. Well, now you don't. Now you literally need a combination of one of the 2-drops and Amulet, or both the 2-drops. And thinking about it more, because of that, maybe I should give the Layer 3. I might addendum make the Layer 3. I'm going to make the Layer 3, I think. I'm going to make the Layer 3. Because it makes it so that if you only hit like 3 devotees, you can still just crack the lair and get the necklace and the blade if you never saw the supplicant, right? So I think I'm going to do that. But overall, I think these 2 cards and / the lair make this archetype very playable and very, very good and very efficient. Also, just thinking about, like, it's a 2-drop with not full stats, right? It's not a fighter, but they are very good. They are the stats that they give them when they have an effect, right? So they're 2-drops that give you 2 cards in hand. And obviously they're tokens, right? But because they buffed these things, like the boots and the goblet are pretty good. And the necklace and the blade the blade itself is insane. The blade is very good. But I would say the 2 best are the boots and the blade. But the other 2 are still pretty good. Obviously giving sword heal is also, like, kind of scary, right? So overall, I think these 2 cards are nuts and very, very good for this archetype. Then we have the shield, the shield bash, 2 mana. Select an allied follower on the field and give it ward. Deal 4 damage to a random enemy follower. This is a 1. I mean, this is really not anything to say. Random, giving something ward. We literally just saw the swipe. What was it called? The bestial swipe from Force. That's 2 mana selected, deal 4 and draw a card for combo 3. This is just significantly worse than a lot of cards we could be playing in Sword. So this card is a 1. Then we have Octrus. Octrus is a 3-drop 3/3. On play, gain Octrus's Crest. And on evolve, you're going to get a blade and a necklace. And then the crest is countdown 8. Whenever you play or fuse a loot card, advance this crest by 1. And then on last words, you're going to get a Remnant of Hollowness. And the Remnant of Hollowness is going to be a 1 mana, deal 4 damage, split between all enemies. So of course the combo is, and we'll talk about Sincero here soon, but the combo is you clear the board with Sincero, and you play this for 1, and it deals 4 damage face, because there's no board for this card to hit, right? So this card is nuts. This card is really good. You can kind of think of this, weird way to think about this, but bear with me. Stay with me now. 3 mana, 3/3, draw a card later on, right? It's an investment card, right? Because if you never see any loot card, you're still later in the game going to get this 1 mana. Deal 4 damage to the board is not bad at all, right? But when you think about combining all of these cards like the Sincero and all of these 2-drops that we just saw, you're actually going to be able to get this down pretty quickly, and you're going to be able to just have this 1 mana deal 4 as like a free card you got in your hand, which is really nice, right? Swords early game does not have a lot of draw, but of course they have Amelia as that late game draw, that mid to late game draw. So having cards that give us resources is really, really strong. And yeah, I think this card, I kind of want to give it a 5. I think I am. I'm going to give this a 5. I think this is a 5. I think Octrus is just a very, very strong card. 3-drop 3/3 was something that we didn't have in Sword that was good, right? And I think this is just a really, really nice card. I really like the art too, but yeah, Octrus gonna be pretty good, and I think this Usurpation archetype may be the best deck in the game. We'll see though. We'll see. Then we have Congregant of Usurpation, and thankfully Sword had to get a bad card for once. So Congregant, well, I guess Shield Bash is pretty bad. So Congregant is a 4-drop 3/3. On play, you get a Goblet and a Boots, and whenever you play or fuse a loot card, deal 3 damage to a random enemy follower, and on evolve, you recover 1 play point. So first, let me explain. Fuse can only be done once per turn per card. So obviously, if you have 3 Sinceros and like a what is the one drop? The Returning Slash, you can deal 12 damage randomly to the board if you fuse everything. But then like you had to have had 2 loot cards before this. So it's like a little weird, right? And you have to have all 3 Sinceros, which you might be losing the game if you have 3 Sinceros in hand. So I want, explain that just for the context of what I'm about to say. But I think this card is really, really bad. He's really low statted. He's only good past his, going first, he's only good if you play him on 5 or 6, right? And because you can go fuse some stuff and then play some stuff, right? But going second, he's still not that good because he's just going to deal 3 damage randomly. So I don't know. I think this card is really bad. I think also another thing is you really want to stay away from these type of cards that you have strong cards like the Octress and the 2-drops that you want to play, but if you fill your deck with these other cards in the archetype that are bad, you're going to devalue your deck, and you'd rather just play good cards, right? Like, you'd rather just play Zirconia on these turns, right? And also, going first, this card is not that good on 4. So, I don't know. I think this is really good. If this had, like, split damage, I would be way more bought in, because then you can kind of know what it's going to hit going first, right, on curve. But he's also just pretty bad later in the game, too. So, I think Congregant is a card you really want to stay away from, because there's just... Sword has so much high-value cards, right? And you don't want to bog your deck down with these in-archetype... Sorry, I banged my table. In-archetype cards that are just not strong, right? You want to fill your deck with strong cards, and then because you're playing this archetype, because Octress and the 2-drops are so strong, you might as well play some Sinceros and maybe the Amulet and maybe the 1-drop spell, right? That's kind of how you want to look at this. So I'm going to give this a 2, though, because it is like a card that supports one of the better archetypes introduced. I don't think it's a 1. I think you might see some play, but I don't think it'll be strong, and I think there's going to be a lot of other cards you'd rather play in this slot. Then we move on to Peppy Scout. This card is just awful. 5-drop 3/3. Summon a random Swordcraft follower that costs 3 or less from your deck. Evolve, select another allied follower on the field, and give it +2/+2. Just terrible, unplayable. 1. Not as bad as that 4-drop, though. Or, not this 4-drop, but the Force 4-drop that gave you, like, the 0 cost on the fairy. Then we have Comrade of the Swordmaster. 6-drop 5/5. Last words, summon a Comrade of the Swordmaster and remove last words from it. This is another one. Like I said, turn 4 and onwards, you can't be playing these sort of just stat sticks that have some value if they don't affect the board or draw you a ton of cards or accelerate your game plan. This does none of that, and it's for 6. This isn't even really good in Take 2 because it doesn't do anything to the board, and it's not high enough stats that's like really scary. Honestly, shouldn't have this been an Abyss card? I know it's supposed to be like Kagemitsu's friend or whatever, but yeah, I think this is a 1. This is unplayable. Then we have the man himself, Sincero. 6-drop 5/6. Fuse loot cards. On play, deal X damage to all enemies. That includes the face. X is the number of differently named cards fused to this card. So once you fuse him with every loot card, he's going to be dealing 4 damage, AoE, and face, right? So that's pretty good. And then on Super Evolve, you're going to replicate the effects of this card's fanfare ability. So if you complete the quest, he's going to basically be doing 8 damage, AoE, and face with the Super Evolve. And then if you combo it with the Octress spell that she gives you, you're going to be doing 12 damage face on 7. This card is pretty good payoff, the important, thing, payoff for playing the other good cards in this archetype. I'm going to give this guy a 4 because, again, he is the payoff, but all of the other stuff is what makes this deck run and what makes this deck work. The other issue, the reason he's not a 5, is he's really bad if you have multiple copies of him, because it's going to be pretty easy to get to all 4 copies one time, but it's going to be really hard to get 8 copies, or 2 copies of each card the second time, right? If that makes sense. So I'm going to give this a 4 because I don't think you want to have, 3 of them in hand. I don't even know if you want to main deck 3 of him. In my build that I made, I'm only playing 2, but overall, very good payoff. Gonna be the finisher for this type of deck. And it is just AoE and stuff, and plays into this style that Sword has in this game, where very high value, but also you're kind of has some control tools as well, like low-key. Like obviously Gildaria, but also this now. We have even more AoE. So yeah, Sincero, pretty good. Another 6-drop though, which I don't love. We already have Gildaria and Amelia, but I do think he is pretty good. And yeah, overall, I think this archetype is going to be maybe the best new archetype off the bat, right? We might have some experimenting to do with Forest and maybe even Haven, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, overall, Sword, pretty good cards, kind of as usual, right? So next we have Rune. All right, for Rune, I think a lot of people will be happy to know they got almost 0 playable cards. Everything is terrible in this class, so we're going to kind of go through this fast. This archetype is just not... It's just not playable in a game like this, right? So we're going to kind of go through it. So first card is the Devotee of Truth. 2-drop, 2/2. Does nothing if it's a 2-drop. But if this card's cost isn't 2, restore 3 to your leader. Even if it is a 0-drop, it's still a fighter that heals you. And then as we'll see, because that's the thing about it with Ryo, right? Because Ryo's going to give everything -3. But we'll kind of see, we're not reducing cost with other cards, we're increasing the cost of stuff. So this is going to be a 3-drop 2/2 that heals you 3. Even worse. 1. Valkyria is probably the only good card because it's just so generic. 2-drop 1/1 on play, draw a card. And then on Evo, it's going to banish a enemy follower, and then Super Evolve, it's going to banish all enemy copies of that follower. So this is a pretty good card, but still not playable in really any deck right now, outside of pure Earthright, which got no support, so there's no reason to play it over the hybrid Rune. This is going to be a 2 from me. Illusory Conjuration, 2-drop spell. Select a follower in your hand and increase its cost by 1. And then destroy a random enemy follower. So the destroy a random enemy follower part is actually fairly strong. I don't want to downplay that. But this whole increasing the cost of followers is not good. I'm going to have to give this a 2 just because it is a hard removal. It is random, right? But I'm going to give this a 2. But this archetype just does not work because the cards need to do something on play, or they need to do something before their cost is messed with, right? So then we have the Congregant of Truth. 3-drop 3/1. If this card's cost isn't 3, summon 2 exact copies of it, rush, and then on Super Evolve, summon an exact copy of this card. This is one of the better payoffs for this, because if this is a 4-drop, it's going to be a 4-drop 3/3, summon 2/3, or sorry, 4-drop 3/1, summon 2 3/1s with rushes. It's okay, and it's like a okay body without messing with his cost. But in the Super Evolve is fine, but overall, I don't know. I'm going to give this a 2 because I think this is one of the better increased cost card type things, but this isn't good enough payoff because you have a lot of control tools in Rune already. And again, this archetype has no win con and isn't good enough to want you to play this over this hybrid Rune that we have. Then we have the Institute of Truth. 3-drop amulet. Countdown 5. I really have no idea why this has countdown. Like, they think this effect is so insane, but it's not. Countdown 5. Whenever you play a follower whose cost has been changed, draw a card and advance this amulet's count by 1. And then on engage, you can select a follower in your hand and increase its cost by 1 and give it -1, or is it +1/+1? Yeah, +1/+1. I do want to look, so... Yeah, okay, so if you buff this, it's going to become a 4-2 with Rush. That is better. Those are better. But obviously you have to kind of do nothing on turn 3, and then you get these 3-4-2s with Rushes. Like, okay, I do like that it at least buffs the follower, right? But, again, we really need our socks blown off for us to want to play any of this over the old Rune stuff, right? So I'm going to give this a 2. I really have no idea why this has Countdown. This is not a good enough card to need Countdown, in my opinion. Even if, like, you know, you get an extra draw every turn, basically, you're still playing these bad cards that just don't really, that aren't that good. You know, because even, like, you know, even looking at, like, this amulet with this card, right? Even it's a 3-drop 3/3, heal 3 is, like, not that amazing, you know? This need to say draw a card or something, you know, but obviously with the amulet draws a card, but that would be fine if it's like forever, right? But the fact that this has countdown 5 and it accelerates, so you're only going to get maybe like 3 turns of this, I don't know. I think, what'd I say? This is a 2. This is a 2. Aztec of Wuxing. 4-drop 3/3, summon a Paper Shigami, of course that's the 2/1, and then on evolve you're going to summon another 2/1. Just not good enough. There's no reason to play this. Yeah, just not good enough. This is going to be a 1. We have way, way, way better spell boost cards, and we have way better cards that we want to be playing, and we don't need the Paper Shigamis. Back in the day, this would have been like, okay, maybe, but we just don't need the Paper Shigamis much anymore. Then we have Crystal Gazing. 4-drop, gain Crest Crystal Gazing. That's it. The Crest is last words, draw 2 cards, deal 4 damage to all enemy followers. I don't know what game they're playing where they think you could just completely skip turn 4 and not explode, and think that drawing 2 and dealing 4 damage to all enemy followers is a good enough payoff. Because it would be going into your turn 6 that this effect would happen. This need to probably say turn like 3 mana. Yeah, this card's just terrible. 1. Sorry if I'm being too hard on these rune cards, but they're just really, really bad. Risky Amalgamation. 4-drop. Summon a guardian spell. Summon a Guardian Golem and a Clay Golem. Guardian Golem is a 3/3 with Ward. Clay Golem is just a 2/2 vanilla. 1. This card is terrible. It's really funny how bad these cards are, to be honest. Supplicant of Truth. Deal 3 damage to all other followers. If this card's cost isn't 5, draw 2 cards. So this is, oh, it's a 5 mana 3/2. I thought it was a 5 mana 3/4. 3/2. What? No, this card's a 1. This card's terrible. Okay, no. This card's terrible. This archetype is awful. I thought this was at least a 3/4. Dealing 3 damage, AoE doesn't do anything. It also hits your own guys. And then, if it's at 6, you draw 2 cards. So it's a 6 mana 4/3, deal 3 AoE, draw 2 cards. That's not even playable base without having to set this up. This card is awful. Oh my gosh. This archetype is terrible. This is a 1. And then we have Ryo. 9 mana, 9/9, on play. Reduce the cost of all followers in your deck by 3. Transform a random spell in your hand into an Ursat's Elimination. That's something I just realized is we didn't even really get any good spells except this for this archetype to have spells in our hand to be able to transform, right? Because I thought this was going to kind of be a spell-heavy archetype because we need to turn a random spell in our hand into an Ursat's Elimination, even though, you know, for some reason it can't just give it to us for free. It has to, you know, transform for 9 mana. Every other, isn't it funny? Every other of these low-cost omens give it to us for free, but whatever. And then it costs 0 to the end of turn. Ursat's Elimination is increase the cost of all followers in your hand by 1, and then destroy all enemy followers. So I do think this card is like not terrible if you play him out of his archetype, because his archetype is terrible. Like, all of the payoff cards are not good, but he is a 9-drop 9/9 that AoEs the board. Obviously, your hand is going to be increasing cost, and you can't really play him with D-Shift because he could randomly turn D-Shift into an Ursat's Elimination, and you probably just lose the game. but it's like a better Fenny, but we're in like the best class in the game, and we don't need a card like this. I'm gonna give him a 2 just because he's a 9-mana 9/9 that clears the board. Is that even? He probably should be a 1. He probably should be a 1. I'm gonna stick to the 2. I'm gonna stick to the 2. Yeah, Rune, awful. Rune just got terrible, terrible, terrible cards, but it's good, right? I don't think anyone's gonna be crying over Rune getting unplayable cards, but really disappointing to see like a class, even if it is really strong, get just such an incoherent new archetype when we're this early into the game. But what are we supposed to do? So that was Rune. Next we have Dragon, and I would definitely say Dragon was a pretty big winner for this set. It got a couple good consistency tools, so that's some draw, right? And I think we might be seeing finally a playable ramp deck. We'll have to see. So let's get into the cards. First we have Ferocious Flame. This is of course just an almost one for, I guess we could call it a retrain of Disdainful Rending. Disdainful Rending, of course, is one of the best cards in the history of Shadowverse 1. And if you want to hear more about my thoughts about that, check out the video where this came out. But select an allied follower on the field and deal 1 damage. Deal 3 damage to a random enemy follower. If you're an overflow, draw a Dragoncraft follower. So the issue with this card is it's not as good as the sword card, the 1-drop, if we're not taking into account the damage, right? If we take into account the damage, this card is nuts, and if you're a good player, meaning you're lucky, this card is going to be insane, right? So I think this card is strong just because even if 80% of the time it hits the right target, this card is nuts. But the random aspect just makes this feel so bad because it's such a strong card. It's such a nuts, design. But they're like, oh, let's nerf it by making it random, So I really don't like that. But this is a 4 out of 5. I think this card is really, really, really good. Then we have Devotee of Disdain, another sort of retrain-esque card from Servant of Disdain. This one looks way worse, though. I really like the original Servant of Disdain. 2-drop 2/2 during your turn. Whenever this follower takes damage but isn't destroyed, draw a Dragoncraft follower. So obviously this combines very well with the Ferocious Flame, the Disdainful Rending. And that was, a very key part of Dragon's early game, was locking down the early game with, like, the Servant of Disdain and the Disdainful Rending to clear boards and draw cards and draw into your stuff. So this card is very, very, very good. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. Then we have the Nation of Disdain, the Fire Nation. 2-drop Amulet, countdown 4, engage 1, deal 1 damage to all followers. I think this card's really bad. Going back to that discussion we had with the gold sword card, we don't want to be playing these bad in-archetype cards in our deck because we'd rather just have the best of these archetypes and then the best of the rest of the dragon cards we have access to, right? So I think Nation of Disdain is not good, really, at all. It's weird that this thing had a countdown, especially since the engage costs 1. So, yeah, overall, not too big of a fan of this card. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5. I don't think it's unplayable. Ocean Rider, 3-drop 1/1. On play, summon a Majestic Megal Orca. Of course, that is the Marine Rush 2/2. If you're in Overflow, summon 2 instead. And then whenever an allied Marine follower enters the field, give it Ward. So this is a really nice addition to the Neptune sort of sub-archetype sort of package that we have in Dragon right now. Of course, Neptune is one of the best cards in Dragon. And this card slots right in there and gives you a lot of really good early game, right? We were talking about the Servant of Disdain with Disdainful Rending, or what is he called now? Devotee of Disdain plus Ferocious Flames. And then you add this on too, you're really going to be able to lock down the early game pretty well. So that's really cool. I think the one thing I've seen people say is that it comes out on the turn that you play ramp, you play the Dragon Sign. I think that's fine because you're not always going to have the Dragon Sign. And there's some matchups, because Dragon Sign is 3 mana, there's some matchups where you can't afford to skip turn 3. So overall, I really, really, really like this card. I think this is a 4 out of 5. Then we have Raging Lightning, 3-drop, deal 5 to all followers with the highest defense. Then if you're an overflow, deal 3 damage to all leaders with the highest defense. So all leaders includes yourself, so if you're higher health, you're going to take 3 damage. But it's a really interesting card because if you set your opponent's board up right, you can pretty much do 5 AoE for 3 damage, which is pretty cool. But overall, most of the time, this is just going to do 5 damage to the highest health thing. But I think this is kind of a cute card. I think it could see some play in, as like a tech option if boards are constantly like at enough where it's like, man, if I had Raging Lightning, this would clear the board, So I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. I think it's a pretty good card, and I wouldn't be shocked if it saw play somewhere, but I don't know. I don't think it's like as good as some of the other Dragon cards we've gotten so far. Then we have Supplicant of Disdain. I'm going to call it right now. I think this is going to be my cope card of the set. This card is exactly like Vayne from Shadowverse 1 for Sword, but better in every way. Vayne, of course, was one of the summonable cards from Dragon Knight, and it's basically this card is a better version of Vayne. So this card is a 5-drop 3/5, Rush and Ward. At the end of your turn, fully restore the defense of this follower and restore the same amount to your leader. So when you think about this, if you evolve and kill, like so let's say they went Zirconia and they hit into something, right? So they're not at 6 health, they're at 5 health or lower. Play this, Evo, kill the Zirconia, it's left at 1, it re-heals, goes back up to 7, and you heal 6, and then the knights have to go into this thing. Stuff like that makes this card really interesting. Like the fact that it's just a 5 mana, kind of like swing into something, kill something, and then you have a ward to back up and you heal. Like, I kind of like this on curve, especially if you are able to ramp, right? If you go first, ramp on 3, and then play this on your 5, which would be their 3, right? Or it would be going into their 4, right? You'd be responding to their turn 3. Did I do that math right? Yeah, I think so. I really like this card. I just don't know, like, does Dragon have room for a card like this? And also, is this type of card even good in Dragon? Because obviously this was very good in Sword, but I really like this card. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. I want to give it higher, but we have to test. We have to see, right? I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. Then we have Gamyu, and Gamyu is pretty, I would say, kind of boring. 5-drop, 5/5, gain her crest, and then enhance 7, give this follower Storm, which is pretty good. Storm is pretty good, turns out, right? Once on each of your turns, when this follower takes damage but isn't destroyed, deal 3 damage to a random enemy follower. And then once on each of your turns, this is a crest. Once on each of your turn, when an allied follower takes damage but isn't destroyed, add a Fangs of Ardent Destruction to your hand. So on 5, you're going to play this, Evo it, swing into something, deal 3 damage to something else, get your Fangs. Oh, sorry, the Fangs is, I should show what the Fangs is. The Fangs is a 0 cost, deal 1 damage to all followers, so that includes your own followers. So basically on 5, you're going to Evo this, swing into something, kill that, deal 3 damage to something else, gain your Ardent Destruction, and then pass, and then this thing probably dies, and then every turn after that, you're going to get a Fangs of Ardent Destruction, because even if you like want to keep chaining them, you can go play something, play Ardent Destruction, get another one, right? So you're kind of always going to have a 1 AoE for the rest of the game, which is pretty interesting. And then what I really like about this card is after 7, it's always going to get Storm, so it also it's a really good removal piece in the mid game, but then in the late game, it's going to have that Storm. So overall, I think this card is very strong, and will be interesting to sort of see where Dragon sort of creates the deck, right? Because you could go in more of a control aspect with this card. I think that 5-drop we just talked about, and some other AoE stuff. Or you could go sort of mid-range ramp and try to burn your opponent with like Fortes. And this card, which has Storm, right? And some other cards we'll talk about here in a second. I'm going to give Gamyu a 4 out of 5. I don't think it's a 5, but if it ends up, we look back, right? And it's like, oh, this was a 5 out of 5. I wouldn't be too shocked. I think this is one of the stronger cards of this set. Then we have Snowstorm Dragon Newt, 6-drop, 6/6. Fanfare, destroy all damaged enemy followers. I was talking to my friend about this, and initially I was like, but thinking about it more, I do think this is actually a fairly strong card. The fact that you're going to get that 1 AoE every turn once Gamu is down on the field is really nice, and you basically can just clear any board with this, and it's a 6/6, which is not nothing. 6/6 is a pretty well-statted card. My only issue is you have a lot of better cards that don't need setup that do AoE, and namely, I'm talking about Burnite and what's it called? Twilight Dragon, the 9-mana 9/9, right? So overall, I think this is a cool card, and it might see play. I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5. I think this is a 3 out of 5. I like that it's fully statted, pretty much. It's a 6/6, and it has just a really strong effect. Kind of, obviously supposed to be Feline's, not friend, but like the support for Feline, so kind of works well with Feline as well. So overall, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. I think it's a pretty playable card. Then we have the Congregant of Disdain. 6-drop, 5/7. Deal 3 damage to all followers. At the end of your turn, if this follower's defense is 3 or less, give all Dragoncraft followers in your hand +1/+1. I think this guy is super gimmicky. Again, going back to what we talked about with the gold sword card, we don't want to play bad cards in archetype if our archetype is like strong, right? This card just doesn't do anything. I don't think this card is good. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5. I'm giving it a 1. I'm giving it a 1. Yeah, I think this card is not good. I think all of the other Dragon cards are really good. Most of the Dragon cards are really good, but I think this one is going to be left out of a lot of decks, and I don't think it really has a place in any of the decks, because 3 AoE is just too awkward. There's not a ton of boards where 3 AoE works, and most of the time you're going to have to evo this thing and swing over something else, and they'll probably die, right? Because it itself got hit by 3, so yeah, I don't like the Congregant. Then lastly, we have the Legendary, and this is Azure Ifrit, Heir. Is that it? Yeah, Heir to Disdain. 9 mana, 5/7. Ward. On play, do this 3 times. Deal 2 damage to all followers. So that includes himself. During your turn, whenever this follower takes damage but isn't destroyed, deal 1 damage to the enemy leader. And then Super Evolve. Fully restore the defense of this. Sorry, I'm covering it. Defense of this follower. Do this 3 times. Deal 2 damage to all followers. That's the Fanfare, right? So my issue with this card is it's really low statted. It's a 5/7 for 9. It needs a Super Evo for it to be really good at all. And it's 9 mana in a game where we only have 2 cards that ramp, and one of them is significantly worse or nerfed and not good in the Giant Sign, right? So I just don't think we can be playing 9-cost cards that require Super Evo, that don't even like win us the game on the spot. It just does 6 damage, maybe 7. Maybe 7 sometimes. So overall, I think the Azure Ifrit is just not that good. I'd rather just play Twilight Dragon almost every time, because he doesn't need a Super Evolve. But if you do just happen to have Super Evolve, his Super Evolve is insane because you draw 3 cards and stuff, which is still Dragon's issue, is card draw. So overall, I'm going to give this guy 2 out of 5 because I think he will see play, and I think people will try him. But I think overall, I don't think he will be the best build for this ramp Dragon archetype. So that is Dragon. Overall, I think Dragon is one of the big winners for this set, and I'm really excited to see what it can bring for this meta. Now we have Abyss, which is getting a brand new archetype. A lot of these cards are pretty interesting, but we will kind of discuss the overall power level of this archetype, in my opinion. I do think it's missing a couple pieces to be really, really good, but let's get into it. First, we have Spirited Gravekeeper. This is one of the cards that's not in this archetype, but is actually really low-key, pretty strong. It's a 2-drop 2/2, so vanilla fighter. And then Enhance 7, reanimate a 5 and a 3. This is a really good card in the current version of Abyss that we have, right? And not thinking that we're going to be doing all the mode and choose stuff, right? So, because this is going to maybe summon us a Sharon, and probably summon us a Vuela or a Zombie. And that is a really good turn 7 play going into our Cerberus, right? And this isn't a brick because we can just always, forever play this as a vanilla fighter. So I actually really, really like this card. I'm going to give it a 3. And it's kind of a card that I love these type of designs where it's like vanilla or kind of doesn't do anything. And then later in the game, it's, pretty good. Actually, like really good stats, right? If you hit the Sharon and any 3-drop. So really like Spirited Gravekeeper. I'm going to give it a 3. Then we have Sham Nacha. I've been calling her Yamcha. 2-drop 2/2. Fanfare. Reduce the faith of Faith Sham Nacha Heir to Entwining by 10. To give it, increase the number of modes you can select by 1. Super Evolve. Select the enemy file on the field, destroy it, and add a copy of it to your hand. And then Faith. What is Faith? It starts at 0. And then whenever you select modes, increase Faith by 1. So this whole deck is when she's in your deck, you're going to get the Faith icon. And whenever you do a mode, you're going to go up by 1. And once you hit 10, you play Yamcha, goes down to 0, and you get the effect that every time you do a mode, you can select an additional mode. Is this good? It is. Once you complete the quest of doing 10 modes and then finding this 2-drop and playing her, it is really good. The issue is getting there in a efficient amount of time, and I don't know if you're going to be able to consistently do that. And I think that's the issue, is the consistency. So we'll kind of see throughout these cards that we might be able to, but my issue is with a build like this, I don't think it can beat Rune. So we will kind of discuss as we talk about all the mode cards. But for now, I'm going to give Yamcha a 4. I think it is a pretty good card. Also, the Super Evo is like a really nice effect. Like basically killing something and drawing you a card. There's a lot of cards that you can steal that would be nuts. Amalia. What else is like just going to be on the field maybe that you need to take care of? Even like an Odin, right? It's kind of funny. So pretty good. I'm going to give that a 4 out of 5. First, we have Castle of Entwining. 2-drop amulet. Select a mode to activate, draw a card, and then, or give a random allied follower on the field +1/+1, and then engage, destroy this card, replicate the effects of this card's fanfare ability. So you're probably going to draw another card. So this is basically 3 mana, draw 2 cards, because I don't think you're ever really going to be doing the +1 in this archetype. And you also can split the mana, right? You don't have to do, it's a little bit better than the Seraphic Tidings, right? Because it's 2 for 1 draw and then 1 for the next draw. And of course, it increases your modes by 2. So that's pretty good for 1 card in a 2-drop. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. That is something that draw is something that Abyss needed. So yeah, 3 out of 5. Then we have Devotee of Entwining. 3-drop 1/1. Select a mode to activate. Deal 1 damage to all enemy followers, or give this follower +2/+2. On evolve, replicate the effects of this card's fanfare ability. This card is really strong for this archetype. It's going to be a control tool in the early game and on that first evolve turn, because it's basically an Apollo, but you have the option to go half and half, or either make her like a 7/7. And then also after Yamcha effect, she's going to be really big body that deals a little bit of AoE. So I really like this card. I'm actually going to give this a 4. I think that in almost every deck, you're just going to replace Apollo with her. There's not really a reason for Apollo anymore. So yeah, really like Devotee of Entwining. I'm going to give that a 4. Then we have Screaming and Loathing. The name is really funny. 3-drop amulet. Select 2 modes to activate. And one important thing is, I'm 99% sure that you will not get 2 faith activations from this 1 card, but we'll have to test that. So, mode 1, recover play point. Mode 2, draw a follower. Mode 3, draw a 3-cost spell, which the only real 3-cost spells that exist is this and Seraphic Tidings, so you draw this again, basically. And then for 4, or the 4th one is deal 4 damage to a random enemy follower. So, this is the card that it's like you have to play this because it's good enough and it increases your modes, but you can't play this in like a mid-range deck. It has to kind of lean control. So you can't really afford to even play like for 2 mana and then do one of these effects. Like you can't do 2-mana draw follower, or 2-mana draw or draw a copy of it, or 2-mana deal 4 damage to random enemy follower. That one's okay, but random, right? So I do think this card is pretty good in its archetype, but again, I think that this is one of the cards that makes me a little weary of this archetype and kind of makes you have to go full control. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. Then we have Supplicant of Entwining. This is another card that made me disappointed because we really needed like one more, maybe 2-drop or card draw or something that was choose, but unfortunately we got this guy. 4-drop, 4/4, select a mode to activate. Deal 3 damage to a random enemy follower and restore 2 defense to your leader, or that's the second option, and evolve, replicate the effect. I think this guy is so bad that it makes the archetype, like, if you have to play this guy, the archetype's pretty bad, right? If you miss with him, it's so bad. I don't know why this didn't say choose, or, select deal 3 to something. Yeah, I don't know, really disappointed in this guy. We really needed him to be either like a 2-drop that did something or whatever. This was the one unknown card or choose card that we had, basically. So I'm going to give this guy a 1. I don't think he's playable, and it's a bad sign if we have to play him, basically. Because even after Yamcha, it's still not a good card. It still deals 3 damage to random enemy follower and heals you 2 for 4. That's not good. So yeah, not amazing. Really disappointed in the Supplicant. Then we have March of the Brutes. This is a 0. This is next to the 4-drop Forest card, right? Deal 2 damage to 2 random enemy followers and the enemy leader. Terrible. Then we have Congregant of Entwining. 5-drop, 4/4. Select a mode to activate. Summon a copy of this and give it follow, or give it rush. Summon this and give it ward, or give all copies of this +2/+2, and then on Super Evolve, you're going to replicate this effect. So this card is really, really nuts, and again, if you get this off Yamcha, this is insane. Being able to do like 2 of these twice if you Super Evolve is really, really nuts. But I think most of the time you're going to just be getting another one of these with Rush and clearing the board. This does make me wonder if you don't necessarily need Gravy anymore in a deck like this, but we'll kind of have to wait and see. But yeah, this card is one of the best payoffs for this archetype, and one of the reasons why you really want to do this mode archetype. So really, really, really like the Congregant of Entwining. I'm going to give this a 4. Then we have Rule Knight and Valneric, the duo unit. 7-drop, 5/5, select a mode to activate. Add a Scream Diffusion to your hand, or add a Wings of Desire to your hand. And then, of course, you're going to get both on the Yamcha effect, or after you do Yamcha. So Scream Diffusion is 0 cost. Summon 2 copies of Rule Knight and Valneric and give them Rush. Really like this card, so let's just talk about it without the Yamcha effect, right? So you're going to play this, you're going to play the 7, and then you get this spell in hand, which you may have a board like state where you don't have to play it immediately, so you can kind of hold on to these 0 cost 2 5/5s with rushes. That would be really awesome if you could do that, but most of the time you're probably just going to have to play it on that turn. And then yeah, so that's like going to be the most of the time on curve. You'll be able to clear some board. You're probably going to have to evo the main body because it doesn't give the main body rush. It only gives the 2 copies rush, right? Then the next card is Wings of Desire. Select an allied Rule 9 Valneric on the field and give it Storm. This is one of the cards you probably, like if you have a really aggressive opener and you're able to just like evo, or you play this evo and deal 8 damage Storm or something, right? Pretty good, but most of the time you're going to click this after the Yamcha effect, where you can do 2 rushes and then also the main body gets Storm. So I do really like that. Overall, I think this card is pretty good. The issue I have is before being able to choose both modes, it is a worse Medusa. And I think that's something that's going to hurt this card, that it's pretty okay on curve, but you really need to get to your quest. You need to finish your quest. You need to get to 10 and then play Shamnacha. But I just don't know how often that's going to happen, especially with us getting like this supplicant that we probably have to end up playing, but it's just not good. Like there's some cards that we have to play that are just not good. So I don't know. I'm interested in this archetype, but I'm a little disappointed with the rest of the stuff we got after all of those reveals. But yeah, hopefully it'll be pretty cool. I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5. Then we have Ephemeral Demon Princess. 8 mana, 4/6. Select 2 enemy followers on the field and destroy them. Deal 4 damage to your leader and storm. This card would be nuts if we had a full Control Abyss, Control Blood-esque deck, but we don't. So this is basically a 1. Maybe I'll give it a 2 because it says Storm. Because Storm is a pretty good effect. And if we ever get like a Mask of Black Death or something, like a some sort of barrier card for Abyss, that'd be kind of interesting, but I'm going to give this a 2. So overall, Abyss, one of the more, potential classes, right? A lot of the cards are pretty good, but it's a little, you have to complete the quest for a lot of these cards to be good, and they're balanced around the fact that you can get both effects a lot of the times. So we'll have to wait and see. Overall, I think Abyss is kind of a winner, but not as much of a winner as something like Dragon. All right, next we have Haven, and Haven has a lot of interesting stuff, and I will say now that we saw the full package and the full picture for Haven, I'm actually kind of high on this new Don't Attack archetype. We'll have to see, though, but I am kind of excited. Let's start with the Devotee of Repose. 2-drop 0/4, gain Crest, Devotee of Repose, and the Crest is going to be countdown 4. At the end of your turn, if allied followers didn't attack this turn, give a random allied follower on the field -2 attack and ward. So this guy's going to come down, be a 2-drop 0/4 ward, basically, and really stop a lot of aggression and let you have time to build up your hand and get to turns where you can AoE, which is really, really nice. I really like this card. Obviously gives you a crest as well. You need to get to 5 crests, basically, for this deck to function at its full power. So having a 2-drop that does that is really nice. I'm going to give this guy a 3 out of 5. Next, we have the Supplicant of Repose. 3 mana, 1/4 ward. On play, you're going to gain the Crest, and the Crest is countdown 4. At the end of your turn, if allied followers didn't attack this turn, restore 1 defense to your leader. I love that all of these crests you just gain on play, because again, you need to hit 5 to really have the deck fully running. And it's just a 1/4 ward, really going to help lock down the early game for you to get to your AoE on 4, 5, and 6 to clear the board up and get into your late game with sort of stalling the game out and dealing damage face with Marwyn, which we'll talk about here soon. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. I think this is just sort of one of those workhorses in this type of deck. Next, we have a really, really interesting card here. The Temple of Repose. 3 mana amulet. Last words, restore 2 defense, countdown 4. Last words, restore 2 defense to your leader and give your leader barrier. Then engage, advance this amulet's count by X. X is the number of crests you have. Gaining barrier kind of changes how we look at the Rune matchup, because again, like I've been saying, these control decks are all cool and everything, but they always lose to the other control deck in Rune, right? So now we have barrier. That lets us eliminate the win condition of Cocytus, D-Shift, Astaroth's Reckoning, Super Evo, kill us, right? And I think that's actually a really big deal. Of course, we can still die to Kuan, Kuan, D-Shift, Kuan, but that's harder to pull off nowadays with the dirt stuff, and also for at 20 health, it's very hard to pull off. But our barrier does get broken pretty easily. So this card I really, really like, and is going to just be hard to deal with for a lot of decks, and it's the exact type of card that is really strong in control decks in Shadowverse. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5, but it's like asterisk, this might be a 5 out of 5 later, But yeah, Temple of Repose is very, very good. Then we have Winged Lion Statue. Winged Lion Statue is a 3-drop amulet. It's going to be countdown 3. Last word, summon a Holy Falcon and Holy Flame Tiger. and then engage 1, advance this amulet's count by 1. And the Holy Flame Tiger, of course, is the 4/4 rush, and then the Falcon is the 2/2 storm. It's basically a 1-cost higher version of the old Beast Call Aria, and it's very funny that we got Beast Call Aria retrain in set 1 with the art and the same character on and everything, and then we just 2 sets later get the exact same card but will cost 1 more. You'd almost think that card would be this card, but this is a really nice card. And one kind of thing that I think this set is going to really help is Rodeo. There's a lot of amulets we want to be getting now. This amulet, the Temple of Repose, and of course that 3-drop neutral rock that lets us draw a card every turn because Rodeo will bypass that. But this is a very nice card for Amulet Haven, which of course you guys know I always cope on. And I really hope this is the set that Amulet Haven can be good. I'm going to give Winged Lion Statue a 3 out of 5. Then we have Marwyn. Marwyn is a 4-drop 4/4. On play, you're going to get a Torrent of Despair, and then on evolve, you're going to gain his Crest. And his Crest lasts for the entire game, which is kind of a big deal. And then at the end of your turn, if allied followers didn't attack this turn, deal X damage split between all enemies. That includes the face. X is the number of crests you have. So if you're able to clear the board and have 5 crests, he's going to be dealing 5 damage to the face. And of course, if you do that 4 times, again, that's kind of hard to pull up, but if you do get to do that 4 times, you win the game most of the time, right? So I really, really like this archetype. This style of deck is really interesting. And now that we have that barrier card, I think it's a little more reliable to be able to do this and not feel like if we run into Rune, we just auto lose. Let's talk about the token, though. The token is a 2-drop, banish a random. Obviously, I don't like that, but banish a random enemy follower from the field and delay the counts of all your quests by 1. That's a big deal because a lot of our quests say 4 countdown, right? So it is annoying to have to re-get our crest back to keep doing the 5 damage. But that's where a lot of those infinite crests come in, like Marwyn, like Grimnir, and like Wilbert, too, we might be able to play as well as just a big value card. So this card is pretty good. And overall, Marwyn, I'm going to give him a 4 out of 5. I might be coping, and this might be my most, this class as a whole, I might be super way too high on, and at the end, we'll look back and go, man, I was really high on this. I thought it was going to be good, but unfortunately, Rune is still pretty busted, right? So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5, but I really want this to work, and I think it could. Then we have Blinding Faith. 4-drop, deal 3 damage to all enemy followers. Enhance 8. So on Enhance 8, you're going to deal the 3 damage, and then you're going to draw 3 cards and heal yourself for 3. This card's a 4 out of 5. This card is really, really good. Bridges that gap between Saphira, right? Wait, is that her name? Salefa. Jeez, that was terrible. Salefa, because we can go play our ward on 2, play our ward on 3, play this on 4, and then on 5, we play Salefa Evo, right? Get some healing, stuff like that. And then we can set up our Marwyns and everything. So I really like this card. I think this is going to go in almost every Control Haven deck. And it's a really great addition. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. Then we have Shining Disenchantment. This is easily the worst card. 4-drop, can't be gotten by Rodeo. Countdown 4, deal 4 damage, split between all enemies, restore 4 defense to your leader. Engage, advance this amulet's count by X. X is the number of crests you have. This doesn't give you a crest. This is just another payoff card for getting all the crests and everything. But the issue is the payoff just sucks and it's for 4 mana. So this card's a 1. I don't think this card will ever be played. I don't think this card's good at all. I'm going to give this a 1. Then we have the Congregant of Repose. Select the enemy file on the field and select the enemy file on the field and destroy it. It's a 5-mana 2/4. And then on evolve, you gain her crest. And the crest is countdown 4 at the end of your turn. If allied followers didn't attack this turn, draw a follower with 4 defense. So that is all of your stuff. So that's her, that's your Marwyn, that's your Himeka that we're going to talk about, that's your Supplicants, and that's your Devotees, and any other 4 health things you can get. And this is just going to draw us an extra card every turn, basically because we're never going to be attacking, right? And I really, really, really like this card. This is obviously a nice control tool. We're going to be able to pop something. And if we have the 2-drop crest still active, hopefully she can get hit with the ward. And she becomes a 0-2 ward, basically, right? So, really, really like this card. I think it's very strong and really helps us draw into our pieces that we need. Because this is kind of a piece-reliant deck. Because we need to see Himika and we need to see Marwyn, right? But because we're a control deck, we have this card and a lot of other draw cards that hopefully will let us get to those cards, right? Also, another thing I love that Zealot of Repose is in the background, that guy with the skull mask. He was an old card from Shadowverse 1, which is kind of a cool little thing. So overall, I'm going to give Congregant of Repose, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I know I've been giving a lot of 3s. I don't think it's a 4, but I think it's a solid 3. Then we have Himika, 6-drop, 0-4, gain Crest, Himika, Heir of Repose. Super Evolve set the attack of all enemy followers on the field to 4, and the Crest is countdown 4 at the end of your turn. If there's an allied Himika, Heir to Repose on the field, give X random followers on the field with 4 attack or less, can't attack followers or leaders, and at the end of your turn, banish this card. X is the number of crests you have. So the way this card works is you're going to play this down. You're going to get hopefully your 5th crest, Super Evolve this, and then pass. And then what's going to happen is their things will get stunned or frozen, kind of like Urias. Can't attack followers or leaders. And then when they pass, those things will get banished. The issue with this card is that this effect only happens while she's on the field, so you're going to need a second one. And if they do not have a full board, they can easily just come down next turn if their board isn't full and drop basically anything, evolve it, and kill this thing. And then, of course, their board is going to get banished. But it's like kind of rough because they will still have one thing that you'll have to deal with before you can get into your Marwyn deal 5. And another thing I just thought about was that when you play this card, your Marwyn might mess this stuff up because he could kill your one of your things that you locked with your opponent, and then they'll have a free board space to play something and swing over the Himika. Because the best thing would be if you could Himika lock their entire board, and then she lives and they can't really do anything their next turn because their board is locked, and then everything gets banished, and you go back to your turn with Himika on the field, and then you can do some other stuff, right? But think about this more. I think it's going to be even harder to do that. So now it's like, how good is this card? It's a really like gimmicky Holy Grail, basically. That's basically what it is. And how good is that? I don't think it's that good, actually. So honestly, I think I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5. I don't think this is the payoff this deck needs, but I could be wrong, and it could end up being played a lot. But like I said, it's just kind of a gimmicky Holy Grail, and I'd rather just run more Holy Grails, which we kind of can do with the Maeve, right? If we remember that card, the 7 mana, 5/7, that when she dies, you get the highest cost amulet that was destroyed this game. So maybe she'll come back into play, but yeah, overall, Himika, I'm going to give it 2 out of 5. I think she's a little too gimmicky. So overall, Haven, a lot of stuff to think about, a lot of interesting things there. One of the classes I definitely want to try out the most in a lot of different ways. Definitely this, repose stuff, but also I do want to try Amulet Haven as well. So we'll kind of have to see where that goes. Last but not least, we have Portal, and we got a new archetype with Destruction, but I personally don't feel like it's enough to make it its own deck. There's a lot of stuff here that we can splash into Puppets to maybe make that deck a little better and more consistent. So let's check it out. So first we have the Supplicant of Destruction. 2-drop, 2/2. On play, you're going to select another allied card on the field. If you selected one, destroy it and deal 2 damage to a random enemy follower. And all evolve, you're going to replicate the effects of this card's fanfare ability. Random, it is a fighter, and you want to be destroying your own Testaments, which we'll talk about here soon. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5. I don't think this is better than a lot of the other 2-drops, and it's especially not better than any of the Puppet 2-drops, right? So I think this is a 2 out of 5. I don't think you're going to be playing this too much, but of course, if we ever do get more Destruction support where you can play a full archetype, maybe you play this, but the random damage is really, really rough. Next we have Devastating Soprano. Select 2-drop spell, select an allied card on the field and destroy it. Summon a White Psalm New Revelation. So the White Psalm New Revelations are these eggs. People call them eggs. I just call them like Revelations or Testaments or whatever. Wait, what's the Testament one? I thought one of them was... Oh, maybe that was a mistranslation. Okay, we'll just call them the eggs. We'll call them the eggs. So, it's a 3-drop amulet. Countdown 1. Last words restore defense to your leader, and then you summon a black egg. So, the way this is going to work is every turn, you're going to get a proc of this, a heal 1 or a deal 1, every other turn, basically, right? So, if you combine this with destroy your own thing effects, you can get those effects early, right? So you can go, hey, I have this white one, let me play something to destroy it, and then get the heal, and then we get the black one again, and we basically skipped a turn and got an extra effect. So if we get a couple of these on the field and do some AoE, board clears and stuff like that, we're going to be getting a lot of procs, and over time, this is going to give us a lot of value because we're either going to be healing one or dealing one to the opponent, and it's going to kind of add up, hopefully. That's the hope with this, right? So I do think this is a really good card. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. This is the thing that I saw, and I was like, okay, this archetype might have legs. Originally, only Lashetta summoned these, but now you have Lashetta and this that can actually get this out really early on turn 2 sometimes, but most likely it's going to be on turn 3, is really, really nice. I also like that you can basically duplicate your eggs by Lashetta, and then you play this on an egg, and you get the effect, and you get another egg, right? So really, really like that. But yeah, this card is very, very strong. I think this is one of the better cards for Portal. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. Then we have Wasteland of Destruction. 2-drop amulet. Select another allied card on the field. If you selected one, destroy it and draw 2 cards. Last words, draw a card. This card is nuts for this archetype. The only issue is, like I said, we kind of do have to play this with puppets because the stuff we have right now is not good enough to be its own archetype. And with puppets, you really need to see your destruction stuff to get this off the field, right? So I don't think it's going to be too hard, but basically drawing 3 cards off this card is going to be really, really nuts. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. That's a lot of what Puppet needed, was more card draw. So I really, really like that. Obviously, you can stack your puppets and stuff. And it's not going to be too hard to sort of find things to use or find things to destroy with this card. Then we have Axia, Heir to Destruction. 3 mana, 2/4 ward, can't be destroyed by abilities. And then on Super Evolve, she's going to deal X damage to the enemy leader. X is the number of other allied cards on the field. Destroy all other allied cards on the field. So this is going to, basically, if you have a full board, you're going to deal 4 damage. And then if you had a couple eggs, you might either heal 1 and deal 1 or stuff like that, right? So there's going to be a lot of direct damage if you've set the board up correctly. But overall, other than that, it kind of does nothing else. It's just a vanilla without a Super Evolve. So I could see it being a brick. It's not really that well statted either. 2/4 with ward is not amazing. And obviously they can't be destroyed by abilities. Doesn't matter because they can still be damaged by or you can still be killed by damage from abilities, right? So I'm actually going to give this a 2 out of 5. I think you're going to have to play this in this archetype, but it kind of feels bad. It's not an amazing feeling to be like, wow, I played this 3 mana 2/4 that did nothing, and I used my Super Evo on not Orcus, right, to do this. So I'm going to give this 2 out of 5. I think this is a pretty weak card. I wish that this had some other, like, on-play draw a card or on-play give you a puppet. I know that, Lashana doesn't give puppets, but stuff like that, right? Then we have Devotee of Destruction. 4-drop, 4/4, on play. Give this follower +X+X. X is the number of other allied followers on the field. Destroy all other allied followers on the... allied cards on the field. Destroy all other allied cards on the field. Ward. So this is basically just going to be a giant body that activates your eggs. How good is that? I think it's really bad. I think this is a 1. I don't think a giant body is good on turn 4. I think turn 3 is the last turn you can really do something like that. So yeah, I think there's a 1. I don't think this is really playable. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe like... No, because you can't even get it on curve. I'm thinking if you get like a couple puppets, hold them, and then you make a 7/7 ward, That's still not even like that good, but maybe. Is this a 2? Okay, I'll give it a 2. I'll give it a 2. I don't think it's unplayable. I'll give it a 2. I'll give it a 2. Then we have Lashena. Lashena is 4-drop, 2/4. On play, you're going to add a Melodous Monody. That word is so hard. To your hand, and she can't be destroyed by abilities. And then on evolve, you're going to get the White Egg. So the Melodous Monody is 1 mana. Select an allied card on the field and destroy it, and deal 4 damage to a random enemy follower. Obviously, it's random, but dealing 1 damage or dealing 4 damage for 1 is really nice. And you're going to get a proc of the egg. So overall, this card is just sort of the not payoff, but like the setup for this whole archetype. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. I think it is pretty good. And yeah, I like the new art for her. Then we have Wired Assault. So now this card. 4-drop, select an enemy follower on the field and destroy it. And add 2 copies of Puppets to your hand. I think this is a 4 out of 5. I think this card is really, really nuts. Back in the day, we had a card in Shadowverse 1 called, I believe it was called Puppet Shock. It was a 3-mana deal 4, and you got a puppet in your hand. And it was really, really nuts. This card is very comparable, and I think it's going to see a lot of play in Puppet decks. And we already played some, like, Divine Thunders and stuff like that, so this card obviously plays into our archetype, and giving us 2 puppets is really, really nice. So, Wired Assault, really, really good. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. Then we have Field Scientist, 5-drop, 3/4. Select a card in your hand and discard it. Draw 3 cards. Unplayable. This is a 1. You can't play a 5-mana 3/4 that draws you cards. That does nothing else. It only like really pluses you by 1 because you're discarding a card, right? So overall, no. This card is really bad. I'm giving this a 1. Then we have the Congregant of Destruction. 6-drop, 3/3. Destroy X random enemy followers. X is the number of other allied cards on the field. Destroy all other allied cards on the field. So this is an AoE. One issue I have with him, though, is that he can never do 5 because he's going to himself take up a board slot. So you can always try to do 4, but if there is something big that he misses because it's random, you are going to have to evo this guy and swing it. And hopefully it's not a Gildaria or something, right? And you don't have to like waste a super evo to kill the Gildaria or something like that. So, but that's a niche scenario. I think overall this card is pretty good. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. Having an AoE in this archetype is really nice, but we do have a lot of good 6-drops already, like Noah and Sylvia, right? So this is going to be competing for that slot. So we will have to see, but I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. Then the last card, Supersonic Fighter, 7-drop, 3/3. Summon a ominous artifact. Is that beta or gamma? Whatever. The AoE one, the 5/3 that deals 3 at the end of the turn. Or 3 to the board, the opponent's board. On evolve, select an allied artifact follower on the field and give it +3/+3. Obviously, this card is unplayable. This card is terrible. But I do really like the art. This is a 1, but the art is pretty good. So yeah, that is the set. Overall, I think we're going to be in for a lot of the same. I think the big winners are Dragon for sure, Sword, and maybe Haven, depending on what happens. But I would say Dragon and Sword are the big winners. And a lot of people would argue, and I would argue with them, that Sword did not need to be a winner in this set, you know? So we're going to be in for a lot of Sword, and I don't think any of these decks really topples, or any of these additions really topple Rune, unless we can cook up a Haven deck that really uses that barrier effectively. So yeah, that was the card review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's a lot of fun to do these. And if you're watching this day of, later, when the servers turn on, I will be streaming. We're going to open a couple packs, and we're going to play and craft some stuff. So that'll be a very fun time. So hope to see you guys there, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.